Hey friends, just want to give a shout out to our newest Patreon subscriber, John Mellinson. Thank you so much for joining up, pal, and supporting the show. And don't forget, guys, you can help support Roadie Free Radio as well for as low as $1 a month by heading over to patreon.com/Roadie Free Radio and signing up to be one of our monthly supporters. Thank you guys in advance.
Hey, what's happening, Roadies? This is Trace Davis.
This is Nate Barr.
What's happening, Roadies? This is Ashley Shepard, and you're listening to Roadie Free Radio.
What's up, Roadies? My name is Larry Milburn, and this is Roadie Free Radio, your VIP pass to meet and greet the stars behind the scenes of the music and film business. All right. What's happening, Roadies? Welcome back. Lawrence Milburn here, your host, coming at you from a barn. Our guest this week is Mr. Ashley Shepard. We're going to get to him in just a moment. I hope you all are well. Thank you guys for tuning in, for sitting around the Roadie campfire and hearing yet another inspiring tale this week. I'm very excited to bring you today's episode, and I wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by airturn.com. As you know, these are the folks that make wireless products such as Bluetooth pedals and multifunction remotes, supporting hundreds of thousands of customers in over 40 countries. Guys, they've been doing it since 2008. They have a wide range of products to choose from, including the AirTurn Go Stand. As you know, I love the AirTurn Go Stand. I'm looking at one right now in my studio, set up, ready to roll anytime I got to do some musical stuff. They're portable. They break down. They're just fantastic. Anyway, head over to airturn.com. Use the code ROADIE to save yourself 10% off your entire order. That's ROADIE. When you use the code, you get yourself 10% off your entire order. Used to be, I think, 15% for like the Go Stand and a couple of other products. But now we've switched it up, and now you get 10% off your entire order over at airturn.com when you use the code ROADIE. So a little bit of savings there. It all helps. Listen, happy birthday is in order. A couple birthdays this week. Rich Neeson, Brian Rashup, and Ryan Phillip George. By the way, Ryan's episode is going to be coming up. I'm grabbing him, getting him this week. He's on a quick turnaround, so I'm going to be recording that this week, and that'll come out in a couple of weeks. Stay tuned for that one. So listen, I'm recording this on March 24th, Sunday morning, March 24th, and last night, the 23rd, I was at the Indigo Girls, as I had mentioned I was going to be, at the Warner Theater in Torrington, Connecticut. Anyone in the area, if you've not been to the Warner Theater in Torrington, not only is it just 20 minutes from my house, which is great, but a phenomenal old original Warner Brothers theater right here in Litchfield County in the northwest corner of Connecticut. I thought I was going to get to hook up with Brian Spicer, who was subbing in to do some front of house duties for the girls, but turns out he was not there. So I thought for a second, well, I guess I'm not going to get to go. Then Aaron Mikulski, guitar tech, drum tech, great guy from way back, episode 71. You guys may remember episode 71. Go back and check it out. Aaron hits me up and says, hey man, I'm in town with the girls. You want to come down to the Warner and see the show? Absolutely, I do. And another phenomenal moment to get to meet a guest in person. You know, a lot of the times, as I mentioned, I do these things now by Skype, and I don't get to meet the actual guest in person except to see them through video. So when an opportunity like this happens, I like to step up, reach out, and give a hug. You guys are like my babies out there. And so it was really cool. Headed down, saw the whole guitar arsenal. It was definitely a Martin heavy situation, and man, they sounded good. A lot of Martins, a lot of Gibsons. We had some matches. We had a matchless amp up there and a Magnatone amp. I want to try that Magnatone. That thing sounded nice, man. Really good stuff. Aaron, great to see you, buddy. If you're listening, thank you for having me last night. Thanks to everybody, in fact, for having me. Very cool. And I got to meet a gentleman named Tom from SK Systems based out of Long Island. Now, if you've been listening to the show for a while and you listened to Brian Spicer or Bobby T's episode heading back, you've heard of Tom. Tom actually gave them their start in the industry years ago. And it was so cool to meet someone who's been referenced in a couple of other episodes who gave someone a start, who gave a guest a start. I just thought it was super cool. And you know what? Tom, guess what? I'd like to have you on the show, pal. So let's see if we can make that happen. So anyway, just a great night overall. And I got home around midnight, 12:30, something like that. And I thought, oh, I'm going to get to sleep maybe a little bit. No, my son was up at 6:30. He was ready to watch we only give him one day of screen time. Sunday's his day. This kid was in at 6:30, ready to roll. He didn't care that Daddy went out to see a concert last night. He didn't give a shit. Hell no. He was like, go get the iPad. Let me watch the iPad. And while you're at it, go make me a green smoothie. You old fart. That's what he said. 3.5 years old. Kids know. They know how to boss me around already. Anyway, fantastic stuff. So I'm bringing you the episode Sunday here, March 24th, depending on when you're listening. All right. Also, got to give a shout out to another former guest on the show, Joe Rudge, old high school buddy of mine. Joe Rudge, music supervisor, is in the news these days because he is the music supervisor behind the new Netflix film, The Dirt, all about Motley Crue and their antics. Those guys had a good time. Haven't watched the film yet. Going to watch it tonight, as a matter of fact. I got to get through Billions, and then I'm going to watch The Dirt. It's going to be an epic Sunday. We all get screen time today. Anyway, so if you want to check out Joe's episode and hear his tale, he's got an interesting one. That's episode 39. Head back and check it out. I don't know if I'm going to make it to the Ariana Grande show that I mentioned a few weeks back, coming up March 30th, or the Relics Music Conference. I don't know if I can make those two events. What I can tell you I'm going to be at is the Northeast Guitar Expo, April 7th at the Oakdale Theater in Wallingford, Connecticut. If you want to go, if you're going to go, hit me up, info@roadiefreeradio.com. Let me know. Giving out hugs, giving out buttons, giving out stickers. You know what I mean? Hit me up. I'd love to see you there. Also, want to put this on your radar. Next week, episode 129. Oh, man, we're flying through it, and I love it. Episode 129, we got Laura Davis Chanin. It's going to be on the show. Author of the newly released book, The Girl in the Back, A Female Drummer's Life, with Bowie, Blondie, and the 70s rock scene. I've been getting my way through this book. Got a few pages left. Really cool, man. Bringing me right back to New York. So I'm excited to do that interview and bring it out for you on episode 129. Also announced this week, my friends, Woodstock 50th anniversary up in Watkins Glen. So cool to see the lineup and to look at the names of these artists. And, I've been fortunate enough to interview several crew members from several of these bands. Now, I'm going to put this out there right now. It's March 24th. Okay, this event is August 15, 16, 17, somewhere in that zone. I want to go. My wife and I would like to go. I want to go. I want to do some interviews. I want to do some behind-the-scenes stuff of how this festival has come together and will come together and get pulled off. So if you're listening, if you have an angle for me of someone I should reach out to so that I can get there, I'm willing to work. I'm going to work for it. Okay. I'm not just there to sit back and eat brown acid and fucking chill out. All right. I want to do some interviews. So, listen, hook me up. All right. I also want to let you guys know that we are sponsored today by Stagehands Clothing, based in Chicago. This is a husband and wife team that have created the one-stop shop for backstage professionals who are always working hard behind the scenes and count on high-quality, durable workwear. They carry everything from men's and women's apparel and super cool gear, tactical gear, to keep you ready for the next task. Use that code ROADIE, get yourself 20% off your entire order. That's ROADIE for 20% off your entire order. All right, so today's guest is Ashley Shepard. He came to me by way of Jason Greenberg. Jason, I know you're listening, pal. Your time's coming. Your time is coming. Ashley Shepard, owner of Audio Grotto Studio, located in a turn-of-the-century church in Newport, Kentucky. He also owns Picturemusic, a three-way partnership with Ben Davis and engineer Matt Huneman to create complete audio productions, including original music for agencies, brands, movie trailers, and more. He does video tutorials, and you probably also know him from some of his best-selling training books, Pro Tools for Film, Video, and Multimedia, Plug-in Power, and Nuendo Power. He is also a pizza aficionado and a bourbon aficionado. We dig deep, we get into it, we talk about studio life, running a studio, being a businessman, being a creative man, and just being cool. We had a good time. Guys, we are also sponsored today by Show Pro Beard Co., started by live audio engineer Chris Wilson, the audio wizard, and his wife. They have created their very own unique formula of beard balm that not only performs well in terms of health and nourishment, but also provides the control, shine, and pleasant aroma that any bearded professional would appreciate. These are non-waxy, all-natural beard balms that will leave your beard soft, smooth, and nourished. Choose from a variety of natural smelling scents like Home Sweet Home, Morning Wood, Through the Woods, Chain Motor Oil, and of course, original unscented. Use the code RODI over there. You get yourself 20% off your entire order. Hey, also, we hit 250 subscribers over on the YouTube channel. If you haven't hopped over there, see some of the videos I'm putting out, please do so. Hit the subscribe button, like the video, or don't like it. Hit the unlike button. I don't care. I want to hear from you. That's all. info@rodifreeradio.com. And all right, here we go with Mr. Ashley Shepard. Hit it.
Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie.
Ashley Shepard, how are you, sir? What's going on in Kentucky?
Kentucky, boy. Well, we got lots of bourbon. I'll tell you that. If you're ever out this way, I will take you to the biggest bourbon bar in the world, which is just down the street from the studio. Ooh. I always bring clients there, and he's a good friend of mine, and he'll set you up with like the flight of bourbons, and you try the different tastes. It's fabulous.
Oh, that's nice. How do you between your pizza making and your espresso and the bourbon, man? How do you keep it straight out there?
Well, ingredients. It's all about ingredients. What's in the fridge? So with Picturemusic, with the partners here, we always have what's called Fancy Food Fridays, where we just Uber Eats something, because we need Fancy Food Friday,
Yeah.
So, we're all about it. But Matt, the other engineer here and producer, was a chef for a while. And so he brings that. I mean, I like to cook. He likes to cook. So the kitchen is right outside my door here in the control room. It's very well designed, shall we say, for the food intake. It's important.
Right. It's like, hey, Matt, can you grab a U87 and a handful of mozzarella?
Yeah, well,
that's pretty much it.
Yes. Or toast me up a Reuben like you did last week.
Oh shit.
Makes a great Reuben.
Now, I have to say, I'm actually wearing a sweatshirt. I am a vegan, but
okay.
But I'm always on the hunt because back when I wasn't a vegan, ribs and Reubens were my thing. So as a vegan, I'm always on the hunt for the perfect Reuben. I mean, you just say Reuben, and I'm just like, I got to try that.
Man, Matt does it up nice. He toasts the whole thing, does it in the pan. Don't get me started. It's Fancy Food Friday.
I think we know what's on the menu today, man.
That's right.
So, Ashley, you actually, let's start with this.
Okay.
Jason Greenberg.
Oh, that's right. That's the connection. So
that's the connection.
Jason and I went to high school together. Okay. And back then I was I was playing. Jason was not a musician, he's always been a fan. He's always been there to see all the music. And back then the Grateful Dead were still touring, and we kind of were in a little bit of jam band mode, and everybody had a tie-dye, and there was some shenanigans going on.
Yeah.
And
I know nothing of that.
No, nothing of that. That's all. We shan't speak of it again.
Right.
And Jason started taping Dead shows. Mm-hmm. And just completely casually, consumer level stuff. And he just kept doing it and doing it and doing it, and moved back to New York. And by then it's sort of gotten in with the Telefunken guys. And I don't know how where he made the shift into running monitors and teching at that company. But it's big time now. I mean, he's done gigs for the Boss, and he tours with the Tangiers Blues Band. That's his big gig. But he's in New York, so there's always all these things going on. He gets to do a ton of different gigs, and he's just a great guy and a good friend of mine. And his nephew, Zach, is also a musician, and they're always good friends and, you know, stuff going on all the time. So he comes back to Cincinnati a lot, and Zach comes here a lot, and he's a bass player, and he borrows my bass, and I go to see he does like opera stuff.
Wow.
At music hall or with a lot of like the classical people and a lot of the what's the donor class, shall we say, of people in Cincinnati. His mother is big into philanthropy in Cincinnati. So there's lots of cool stuff going on like that. And he goes to LA for his girlfriend. Zach does. I don't know. Those guys are always traveling all the time. So I get to see him in the weirdest places, you know, at the NAMM show or in Europe somewhere. And it's like, it's great. Jason's a great guy. And I'm glad he made the connections, you know, to do this. And it's a small world.
It is a small world, and I thank you for that little preamble expose on Jason, because I've been trying, and I know he's going to listen to this episode, so we're gonna get him right now. I've been trying to get this dude on the show for the last 2 years. He's one of my most elusive guests. Every time I think I'm close, he just kind of, you know, slides out of the commitment, and he's like, "Oh, you should get this guy instead. You should get this guy instead." And I'm like, "Come on, man."
I think he's a very humble guy.
Yes.
But you should have him on, because he's smart as a whip and does all kinds of cool stuff. And Jason, I know the key to Jason. If you get food involved, it's a done deal.
Well, maybe Jason and I need to hop in the car.
There you go.
Sit down in Kentucky.
Oh man,
right?
Bring it.
and have a little pizza, some bourbon, and some espresso, and we'll do a round table at Audio Grotto.
I would be happy to host. It would be my pleasure.
Outstanding. Now you bounce. It sounds like you're still bouncing a lot between Cincinnati and Kentucky. Is that the deal, or no? You're fully in Kentucky.
I can walk outside and see Cincinnati. Northern Kentucky, Newport is right on the Ohio River across from Cincinnati.
Got it.
I'm a Cincinnati guy.
Yeah.
So in 5 minutes I could be on the Ohio River walking.
Wow.
So it's really essentially the same place.
Okay. See, this is now we're exposing my geographical knowledge.
No worries. It's Cleveland's up on Lake Erie, and then Cincinnati's down on the Ohio River at the confluence. Right, it's a tri-state area, so it's Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana. We're all right here at the vortex, as it were.
Nice. Why did you choose Kentucky as the center of your operation?
Well, it's because we bought a house here. Some year when our daughter, our first child, almost 18 years ago, we were living in Cincinnati in a neighborhood called Northside, very hip, cool place, but a little rough around the edges. And when you have your first child, as you're 3 years in, everything changes, right? Yeah. And I was walking around the neighborhood, I'm like, nope, we're out. And we started looking for another place to live. And Newport, Kentucky is this old, like, brownstone row house, great little neighborhood that's been brought back from being a bunch of rentals and sort of run down, in the 80s, let's say. And now it's, all this urban renewal stuff. Well, this is the place to be. These are these turn of the century historic homes. It's beautiful, walkable. We can be close to downtown. So it was like a great place to live. So we moved here. And interestingly enough, the reason we moved here, or one of the reasons, when we first came to look at a house, a friend of mine, Ian Budd, who runs ICB Audio, which is a big outfitter installer place here in Cincinnati, and I've known him for decades, and he was standing on the street, and I'm like, Ian, what are you doing here? And he's like, I live here. And I'm like, well, we're looking for a house here. And he's like, well, I know just the person. And, one thing led to another. We lived up the street from me, and he's a really good friend. And then over the years, it came. My studio was in my house, just up the street here.
Yep.
And we had our second child. Well, when the second child comes along, that's when you get booted out of that extra room in the house. We have a third floor with vaulted ceiling that I did for the studio, so I could have some volume in the control room, and sort of worked up there for some years. And then it was like, I never wanted to own a studio. I say anybody who wants to own a studio for the sake of owning a studio, just be prepared that it shouldn't be for making money per se.
Yep.
It should be to do your work, which is the way I approach it. So I was like, I get kicked out of the house. I got to do something. So we ended up buying an apartment building close by that had a garage attached to it. And I had all the plans to build a much smaller facility over there, to have the apartments pay for the place and have the facility sort of taken care of. And I had the permit, I had the plans. I damn near bought the pizza and beer for the demo. And my wife said, that area of town's doing well. Maybe we should look for something bigger and better, more long-term that you would be really appropriate. And so we started looking around on the MLS, and the church came up, the building that I'm in now, and at a very different price than I had seen it before. It had been for sale for many years. And we had seen it before, and the guy was asking crazy money, and it was just like, have a nice day. But has this beautiful room upstairs. And I was with a friend of mine, Brian Lovely, a guitar player, and we were both in the room clapping our hands going, oh, this would be the best studio ever. We were just totally floored, but it just wasn't going to happen. But then many years later, the price had fallen to such a great degree that it was affordable. And I got my real estate agent. I came in the building. I saw the upstairs, and there's all these other spaces that we turned into apartments and stuff, and that's fine. Then she brought me downstairs, and I walked into this room that I'm in now, and you walk in. This was added onto the church after a fire probably in the 40s, and they dug the basement down.
Wow.
So there was an extra foot dug out. And I took the steps down, and I looked around. I was like, oh, my God, this is it. Because there was windows all the way around at ground level. So they're up high in the space here. And I'm like, windows? Oh, my God. And it, 9.5 foot to the floor joists. I'm like, I can do it. I can build an isolated space down here. It's perfect. It's a bunker. It just everything just kind of fell into place. I can see the front door of my house from the front door of the church. Wow. So my commute is rough. I'll tell you, my coffee, it sheds a couple of degrees as I walk down the street. So we got very, 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 very lucky.
So let's talk about working at home and having a space. Obviously, no overhead. You can do it when you want to do it, but there is that thing of working sort of too much when you work at home, and it is nice to be able to get out, walk to a place, drive to a place, let your head breathe a little bit, your ears breathe. Tell me about the adjustment, and in particular, also talk a little bit about what you said, where the studio is not a place to make money. It's a place to work.
Yeah.
Was that a big adjustment for you? Were you the kind of guy, let's put it this way, were you the kind of guy when you had your studio at home who could separate, who could say 9 to 5 or 10 to 2, whatever the hell it is, that's when I'm working, but I need to be able to step away from my family?
Sadly, no. And I don't know if I ever will, even here, because I'm so close. Yeah. And yet I am away. I think we're all workaholics. Why would we be in this business if we weren't workaholics? Because you can't do it any other way. If you want to 9 to 5 it, then you're going to be over there doing that stuff. Yeah. For me, it's about getting to the good stuff. And I think that takes beyond a 9 to 5 thing. Now, obviously, we want life-work balance. And every time that I get a tool or something in my workflow that allows me to do my job great and quicker, that I get to see my kids more often feature, right? I appreciate that. So the adjustment for me wasn't a big deal. What I did not like about working at home was my studio was on the 3rd floor. So any clients I had over are traipsing through all hell and damnation to get to the studio. Yeah. It's not cool from a professional standpoint if you got corporate, any sort of commercial work, rock bands, whatever. But then they're dragging their Marshall up and knocking your pictures off the wall. It's like, it's a limited lifetime opportunity, right, but financially, for some people, that's the only way you can do it. Sure. And hey, that's where I was, buying a building or God forbid, renting a space to build a studio in is a huge undertaking. And I think that's why you shouldn't be looking at a studio if you're going to build one, that the studio itself will make money on its own. You have to fill it with people that make money. It's all about the people who do the work. So for me, that makes two things important. Number one, in my world, you have to own the building. Now, I'm in Cincinnati. Real estate's cheap, man. Let's be realistic. I could never afford this in Nashville, New York, or LA. Forget it. Chicago, that'd be hard too. But here I can do it. I can have a huge room, and it's affordable, and it works great.
Were you pretty nervous though? Because you're right. I mean, that's another part of the headache. And look, you've got some big clients. You know, you got Puma and Google and a bunch, Proctor and Gamble, NASCAR. So you're working. I get it. But even still, one bad cycle and you're like, oh shit.
Yes.
So when you now take on this responsibility of having a whole building, having a space, and right when you build it, you're not going to kind of go half-assed because you're like, I'm finally going to build it out. This is it. And you could be the game in town. There were 3 little towns there, like you said, that little tri-state area. Yep. So you got to go all the way. And I imagine that's stressful. There's some anxiety into that.
Sure. Well, all the way is a relative term. Because if all the way is floating concrete floors and cinder block walls and that, I didn't do that.
Right.
I did what was appropriate for the space. Like my floors are not. It's a concrete concrete slab on grade because we're in a basement. But I didn't cut the slabs. Because in order to do that, I would have had to pour new footers. Forget it. The budget's toast.
Yeah.
And so my isolation is not perfect. I mean, nobody's isolation is. Every studio I've been in, it's always been isolation.
Yeah.
Unless you spend $1 million, which I did not.
Right.
And it wouldn't have made sense to spend $1 million because then you'd be chained to this thing. You'd be slaving for the mortgage payment.
Right.
So there's that. So I built the isolation to be appropriate for what my needs are, and it works great. It's fine. If somebody's tracking drums in the other room, because we have 2 control rooms here, I'm going to hear a little bit, but turn it up a little bit. It's fine. It's not loud. It's just a little bit. Comes through the snare drum, kind of comes through the floor a little bit.
Sure.
The second thing is the building itself needs to make sense from a real estate standpoint. This is totally not audio, totally not any, complete sidetrack, but we run an event center here where we have weddings and receptions. Wow. We also built 2 apartments. That's what I did first. It took, I had my studio in the big church room just set up, just like table, chairs, boom, which was kind of creepy at night. You're in this church and the lights are dark.
Yeah.
But it was fine. I could work. And I built the apartments. Took me about 1.5 years, I guess, to get all that done. Trying to make a living with brand new baby, not brand new baby, brand new second child, so there was a lot going on. And then get people into the apartments and that can pay for the place, or at least cover your mortgage and a decent amount of the expenses. And then you've got some headroom or a cushion to fall back upon. So for our situation, the property has to make sense by itself. In other words, I can shut the door, lock it, turn the lights off, walk away, and I can still own the building.
That's great.
Maybe I'm not making as much, money, but still own the building and be safe and secure. So it really is a place for me to do whatever it is I'm going to do.
You do a lot of different things.
I do.
There's mixing. There's the mixing. You do voiceover stuff. You do original music and original scoring, recording bands, all that sort of thing.
Kind of everything.
Kind of. 2 questions. Which is the one where you're like, I'm in my place. I'm in my happy place?
Mixing. I'm a mixer.
Okay.
I mean, if I have to choose, but I've had over my entire career, I've always had people be like, man, you just need to pick. Are you a producer? Are you a mixer? Are you a post audio guy? And I'm like, you know what? Go blow, man. Suck, screw off. I'm whatever I want to be.
Blow, suck, screw.
Well, I don't know how.
You got excited.
PG rated your podcast. Yeah.
Here, that's a fuck off. Yeah.
I get to do what I want to do because it's my life. It's my career.
Yep.
And I know if in big markets, I would have to specialize. If I was in Nashville, you have to. But here, I'm fortunate enough to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond rather than a smaller fish in a bigger pond. For whatever that's worth. So I get to do a lot of mastering work, which which is great. I get to do a lot of film and post work, which is great. For example, when I worked at QCA, which is a CD duplication place here in Cincinnati. It used to do a lot of vinyl and stuff like that. It's been around forever and ever. And I was the mastering engineer for about 5 years, right when I first bought the church. It was perfect timing. I needed some extra work, and it was outside of the studio. But going through that process of mastering a lot of records informed my mixing. In other words, I stopped going, oh, well, they'll just get that in mastering, a little more high end or whatever, fix the bottom. Fuck that. Now the mixing, just go for it. I'm going for it for the mix. Let's not fix the problems in mastering. I want the mastering stage for me to be, oh, well, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Maybe crank it up a little. I mean, we hope for that.
Right.
So doing all of these jobs or all these different things helps inform each other job. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally.
If you do a lot of mixing, then when you go back to track, you're like, well, wait a minute. I should just track it like this because that's the way it should sound in the mix. Yep. I'm not saying you have to tweak it out to the ends, to the nines, but you should certainly be going for the vibe.
Right.
People should be able to throw up the faders like the old school guys and be like, well, that's pretty much the record. We can do all the fun mixing stuff and some tricks and dressing and stuff like that. But hopefully it generally sounds like the record just by throwing the faders up. Hopefully.
Yep. Yep.
Do it on the inbound.
Yeah. How do you, not fix it in post, as we say in the film world, right?
And I've done plenty of that.
Yeah. How do you balance, when you have all these different types of projects going on? Is it a brain shift that you have to go through? You know what I mean? Like I find if I'm shooting video, like I got a gig coming up in New York and they want me to shoot video, create a sizzle reel of this event and be the photographer. And that's always a mind fuck for me because, you're kind of spraying and praying in video. I mean, not really,
right.
Praying. I plan my shots now because shooting on a DSLR, try to make it more cinematic. So it's like, I don't want, I'm also an editor, so I don't want to overshoot all that stuff we just talked about. You sort of know, all these parts, right? Everything informs each other. But as soon as I click the button on the camera over on the Canon to be in photo mode, it takes me like 50 photographs before I start
to shoot stills.
Yeah. Because my brain just, you're looking for that one shot, basically, that one frame that's like, okay, that's the shot, as opposed to this whole movement, whatever that you're choreographing. So for you, do you have that?
I think where I experienced that sort of thing is like we just did a demo for an HBO trailer last week. And thinking in film trailer mode versus pop music, that's a definite head shift because it's all about the buff Ds, the subwoofer, and the in a world, blah blah.
Yeah.
And that's a very different mindset than pop music. But that's a sonic, a sculpture landscape that changes. It's not so much functional. Like between still photography and video, there's really a time shift because now you're capturing this little image as a still photo versus spraying and praying. I love that. That's great. That's because that's linear. That's time linear. So that's I can see how that would be more of a shift than probably what I experience.
Yeah.
There's also, I think the biggest shift is mixing for picture, let's say, and mixing for sound alone, music essentially by itself. Yeah. When there's dialogue involved, everything changes. Now dynamics are completely different than pop music. It's like bam, slam in your face.
Yep.
And film stuff is how can we get it clear but dynamic and spacious, and there's depth, and it's a very different thing and not as hyped, I guess.
Right. And maybe even to some degree you're informing each character maybe a little bit by how you tweak their particular audio track, right?
Man, I would love to get to that state more often, but most of the time I'm just getting it. It's so many problems to fix in film post and video post. you're just trying to clean it up. Like, there's the noise in the background, or there's clothes rustling, or they used a crappy lav, or the boom guy's not close enough. And then we cut to a scene that's a lav and we got a match. So there's a lot more nuts and bolts putting it together, I think, there than there is, oh, he's an evil, despicable creature. Let's EQ him evil. Believe me, I'd love to be doing that more often, but frankly, it doesn't happen as often as I would like. But
Yeah. Well, let's hang there for just 1 second. As a filmmaker, I know in the marathon of making a film, by the time you get to a guy like you or a gal like you who's mixing, or you need to get some music in your thing, as the director, as the filmmaker, you're fucking tapped. You're tapped emotionally,
you're done.
right? You're tapped financially. You got nothing, and you have to. You've sat and edited this thing, and now you got to go through this whole the sound part of it.
Right.
So just talk to me a little bit about how you deal with a director who comes in and maybe, things are messed up. They need to be changed. Because there's a little bit of a relationship, even as an editor, I know, there's part of your job is to be a therapist, right? Mm-hmm. And help this filmmaker, get through this process and get him on to the next process. So how do you deal with somebody, that you might be working with that maybe they have some issues, or they're at a particular point in their filmmaking journey?
Which is the end.
Which is the end.
Well, and I think that's the key. What you're saying there is the key. And the way we approach it, certainly with Picturemusic, is we don't want to be at the end. We want to be at the beginning. Mm-hmm. We want to inform your choices from day one. We want to be there at the storyboard meetings. Right. Because any filmmaker worth their salt knows that sound's half the gig.
Yep.
And if they're not thinking about it from day one, they're missing the boat. And then we're left with a big mess, no money, and no time. Yeah. And you know how it works. Fast, good, and cheap, pick two. If cheap has to be there and fast has to be there, good goes right out the window. It's the law. You can't break that law. So how I approach, I understand the question you're asking.
Yeah.
And I guess my twofold response is, the first is to become involved early so we can head them off at the pass. Whoa. You didn't budget for, good sound at during production. So you're going to make it more expensive and more time consuming, or we're going to lose quality at the end. So let's fix this now and be more efficient with your budget and have everything smooth as pie. The audio post flow, getting everything resynced from the field recorders and all that sort of stuff. If we can suss all that stuff out at the beginning of the budget in pre-production, great. Plus, when we look at a script and a shot list, we have ideas. There's ideas like sound could carry this here. What about this? Had you thought about shooting this and helping this inform the story? Mm-hmm. There's a myriad of possibilities there. And if we're good at our job, we should be able to help a director get through that process and come out on the other side looking awesome.
Yep. So it's funny. You triggered two quotes that I sort of live by. One of them I actually had on my editor business card when I was out in Los Angeles, which is begin with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. Right?
Absolutely.
Sort of philosophically and also practically as a filmmaker. And the other one is post-production is the new pre-production. Right? And you're right. There's so many facets to being an independent filmmaker that, it's hard to think down at the end because you're like, oh, fuck it, I'll get there. I just got to get the shot. I got to get my script right. I got to do this. I got to raise the money. I got to max out my credit cards, whatever it is. And then, like you said, you kind of get into the process. And I've been through all of these different processes as a filmmaker, and it's frightening and all that kind of stuff. But if you take the time to sit with the people like you, who you're going to meet 9, 10, 12 months from now, and you're going to be hanging at the finish line, you're going to be hanging with them intimately, then it will inform you. And particularly with the tools now.
And the tools are endless. We can spend forever in post and it's much cheaper now to do. Mm-hmm. So, I think some people blow off decisions. We see this in music production. Just track it. We'll fix it later. Fix it in the mix. That whole attitude. and no matter what the tools are, that attitude is probably a bad attitude. Fixing it in the mix. Yes, it's a fallback position, but it shouldn't be the primary position. We should think with the end in mind, of course.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'll say about this is that in all our commercial work, at least, the B2B stuff and advertising work, we've been to agencies and seen the bids. There's no line for audio. There's plenty of lines for video,
Sure.
but audio is not even in it. And I'm like, it's 50% of what you're doing. It might not have to cost 50% of the budget, certainly not.
Yeah.
But it's 50% of the outcome, and it's not even a line item.
Right.
It's very frustrating to get that. And we are the finishers, right? It's been color corrected and edited. It's picture locked. That's when it shows up on my desk.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so I'm your gatekeeper to the end. How can you not have me as a line item?
Yep.
And expect me to do a great job in 2 days with no money?
Yeah.
Filmmakers, commercial makers, producers, directors, they all need to bear that in mind. I think that's a huge lesson, and their work will benefit. They will benefit.
Of course.
They'll come out looking awesome.
Right.
At the end of the day.
Of course.
No line item. Arr.
It's crazy. Well, I mean, it's, everybody says it, right? It can look great, but if your audio is off a bit, it ruins the experience. And then people like, whatever, dude. It's like, when in doubt, put a lav on and capture your vlog or whatever you're doing with good audio,
Yep.
Don't just be shouting at your camera. Yeah.
And I think it's Spielberg who has the quote, if it sounds good, it looks good, or it looks better or something. I don't know the exact word, but it's out there. You can look that one up for sure. Spielberg. And hey, he knows how to do it.
Yeah. How do you get yourself out of like work ruts, where you're relying on your same old bag of tricks? I guess that's it. How do you mix up your bag of tricks? I constantly mix up my bag of tricks. I am not a template guy. I perhaps should be, might save myself some time. I'm not fast. I am fast, but when I need to be, but I think I say relative to myself, I'm not fast. I'm always like, what reverb should I use? I don't do things via template. I'm mixing what I call a math rock record right now. And I'll work up the first song and get the vibe going. And then I will use that as a template for the following songs. Like per artist or per project, I'll template things out. Like we're mixing an animated series for Prudential. We're doing all the sound, post, and music. And we use a template for that because the series has to match. Sure.
But waking up today to mix a record or something, I'm like, new project, empty, click, and go from there.
Yeah.
One of the things this Nuage thing that I have, the control surface, I can work really fast in building up projects. So I don't necessarily need a template. Like I said, I'm not slow, but or I'm not fast, but I'm super fast in other ways. So I can group things and subgroup and create stems and all that sort of stuff so fast with the control surface that I don't necessarily feel the pressure to build a template that I use. I know a lot of guys do, and they keep busy and they're very consistent with their work and they do great work that way. So I'm not knocking it.
Sure.
And I think there's advantages to it because once you get something dialed in, it's great to be like, that thing where it does the thing. Oh yeah, that's in that song. Let me go grab that setting.
Yeah.
And we have so many options now. The settings are myriad. So it can be very helpful. But that's in essence how I keep it stirred up is I just really don't do the same thing twice. Kind of.
Nice.
Maybe mastering. I do a lot of the similar stuff mastering wise.
Yeah. You hit on something else that I found interesting in what you said. And I'm curious to know if this exists in the audio world as well. I've never actually talked to anybody about this. So as an editor, back in 15 years ago or so when I was in LA, 10, 12 years ago, when that shift of like Final Cut Pro Studio came along, right? And it started really eating into the big mix editing rooms. Yeah, the
Nitros.
Avid. Yeah, and all that shit. the big thing was, and I used to have these meetings with producers. It would drive me crazy. How fast are you? You fast? Are you fast on Avid or are you fast on Final Cut Pro? Who you fast? It was all about how fast you were on the platform. Same thing, now with Adobe Premiere and all that kind of stuff. It's all about this fast thing. I'm a real fast editor, blah, blah, blah. It drives me bananas. In fact, I did a video about it that here's how to take your editing to the next level. Critical thinking, and feeling. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. See it first. Look at all your material. See the cut first, then execute and see if it resonates, right? So I'm curious because for me, and this is what I said in the video, like I could be on any editing platform. As long as I know where my media is, I'm using the same 5 keystrokes, whatever it is, every time. Maybe I would be quote unquote faster or more efficient if I knew more keyboard shortcuts, but guess what? It works for me. So I'm wondering, just curious, in the audio world, did that same sort of thing come up where it's like, how fast is that guy? Is he how fast are his hands, sort of a thing? And I used to joke with people, by the way, and say, I'm so fast that on my keyboard mapping, I've got a button for Sundance. I've got the Toronto thing, right? I just press it, the thing does it itself. Who needs to think about it? Boom.
That's awesome. I've never run into a situation where I'm competing based on that factor. I am a very fast editor. So maybe it hasn't been a question. Mm-hmm.
I grew up on. Are you talking picture now? Or are you talking audio? Because I was asking for audio.
Well, I am saying an audio editor.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, we do edit picture here.
Sure.
We do. And I don't know if I'm fast or not. I've never watched somebody else edit because I don't know. I'm usually not there, but we do picture edit. Mm-hmm. In the audio world, certainly in my situation, because of the market I'm in, I'm certainly one of the fastest guys around here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've been to places, like I did some work with Chuck Ainlay when we were working on Peter Frampton's 35th anniversary. And I did all the editing because we had to edit to picture. Mm-hmm. It was a crazy, 70-track edit between 2 performances. It was complicated. And Chuck's system hadn't even been upgraded to 64-bit to even handle this session. It was a 96K session that Mobile had done. And it was like, he's like, how are we going to do this? And I'm like, I thought maybe, haven't you ever edited some big thing like this with the folder tracks and group editing and to the frame? And he just never really had the need to do that sort of stuff. He's a mixer. I mean, an awesome mixer. He's the best. I learned tons of stuff from him.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe I just haven't run into that as an issue for me. But so I guess I must be okay editing. I guess certainly audio, the video. I have no idea, but audio. And it, like I'll work with bands in Nuendo, and I'm working on drum tracks. Nuendo has a very quick way to slice up a section and slide the content within, which is awesome for drum editing, because you're like, that snare drum's off. Well, you cut it ahead of the snare drum, ahead of the following kick drum, and you just slide the snare in the crossfade. Done. It's like 2 seconds. Wow. And Pro Tools does not do this. It will do it as a nudge function, but it can't do it by a mouse slide. So you can just visually, done.
Right. Wow.
And I do that all the time, and people look at me like, how'd you do that? And I'm like, it's not hard. It's just maybe that particular function in Nuendo makes me look like a genius or something, but it's the software that allows me to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm usually ahead of the game on the editing front. I grew up on tape. I mean, when I was working at Lagosa back in the 90s, I remember the first trick I learned that I was blown away by was the background vocal reel technique. And a lot of people will be familiar with this, but we would take the whole mix, 24 track plus sequencers, whatever was going on, blow it to 1/2 inch, take off the 2-inch reel, put on another one, blow the 1/2 inch mix back to channels 1 and 2, and then do 22 tracks of background vocals, or however many we needed for the chorus, maybe a bridge or something. Then we'd sit there and blend the vocals and get it down to stereo, blow that back to the 1/2 inch machine, and then line up the first syllable and edit it, put the leader tape on there, and then go back to the original multi-track, have 2 available tracks for the background vocals, and manually fly that thing into each chorus. And you'd have to line it up, make a grease pencil mark where you think you need to start, You start on beat 4 of the verse, coming into the chorus, and you'd have to line it up until you got the right mark, and then you'd fly in the chorus. And we'd all have to sit there and be like, did that sound good? I don't know, felt a little late. Let's do it again. Boom, fly it in. Ah, that one feels good. All right, let's go to the second chorus. Let's fly it in. Boom. And you'd have to do each one by hand. So when I look at a digital editor, I'm just like, this is cake, man. This is nothing compared to the way we used to do it. So I always feel like it's so easy now. Anybody who's complaining needs to go home.
Right. I'm glad you brought up Lugosa. You spent a lot of time there, really, really cutting your teeth, I would say, right?
Yeah.
Tell me some stuff you learned there, working there. What was part of that sort of quote unquote training?
Well, I was working with experienced producers, and, you know, the level of detail that we would go into on tracks, like programming the 808 side stick, and like, oh, no, we don't need one there. We need one in between that lyric, and and how precise those guys got. I learned a lot there, and that's Mark Liggett. He was the guy. Mark Liggett and Chris Barbosa. They produced Shannon's "Let the Music Play" way back, big disco hit or dance hit. And Mark moved to Cincinnati and brought the studio there. That's why I stayed. That's really why I stayed in Cincinnati, because here's this kick-ass studio in Cincinnati. I'm like, what is this doing here? I have to work here because I'm from Cincinnati. My family's here. You know. So yes, that techniques like the background vocal thing, I had never seen that done. I was like, this is genius. This is amazing. This totally makes sense. You know.
Yeah.
They were more from the electronic sequencing side. So I think I learned, that's where I really learned all that sort of stuff. I knew how to track drums and bands. I knew way more about that than they did. So, at Berkeley, I have the musical education, so I could communicate with players a lot better than these guys could, because they were just used to like sequencing stuff where you just make it happen instead of saying, can we try a minor tonality on the, they didn't know how to talk that way. So that was my addition. So the synergy of all that sort of stuff, and then working with Matt Senator, who produced the Blessed Union of Souls. He's a guy from Brooklyn. He still lives here. We play in a band together. Him and vocals, man, he's not musically educated, like, minor, major, or whatever.
Yeah.
But he's musical as hell. And he and I sat next to each other at that console for years and years and produced vocal track after vocal track after vocal track, comping. Coming up with the riffs, and I learned everything about vocals from him, and that's a huge experience for me. Yeah. And we still work together, so it's great.
And what was the shift? Why did you leave Lugosa?
It was time, money. Needed to get paid more. The future there was very sort of locked in. I think I had reached the plateau. We had a band called Three Time Loser, Matt Senator, me, and Brian, and Sean, and some other guys, Brian Holland, who's a great DJ, by the way. We had this band, and it came out of this production team stuff, and Matt was the lead singer, and I played bass, and we produced all these tracks, and it got shopped. We went to New York. We played for Epic Records. Everybody loved us, except the president of the label decided not to show that day. So we did get signed. And this was right while my wife was pregnant with our first, it was the Y in the road, fork in the road, as they say. And so it could have been, rock star insanity, or it could have been, the path. Well, it was the path that I chose from that moment on. Yeah. And I think that was it. But I've been sort of getting out of Lugosa, into post, and I transitioned to Lightborn, where they did all this video post work, and the money's better, plain and simple. And got to make a living. So there you go. There's a perfect example of how I started to do more things for very practical reasons, but also enjoy. And plus, every morning they had this tray with all these like croissant and coffee, and they would come in and bring this to you, and I'm like, this is fucking Disney World here, man. We're getting. I had lunch with the guy to work out a rate, and I gave him an hourly number, and I'm eating lobster bisque at this restaurant, and he's like, that's not enough. And I was like, excuse me? He's like, yeah, I don't think I can really go back to the powers that be. It doesn't seem like you need to be more expensive to be the right person.
Right.
And this was a wake-up call for me. I'm an audio guy. I'm like, yeah, let's do the gig. It's great, and never self-aggrandizing or self-promoting. And I was like, well, how about this rate? And he's like, that's much better. And I was like, holy shit, I'm in the wrong business. What's going on here? So learning how to charge for your time.
Yeah.
That sort of, yeah.
Tell me about the writing. You've written several, right?
Yes.
Several books, more than a few.
More than a few, and then some big things for Yamaha. The last thing I did for Yamaha for Nuage and Nuendo was 850 pages. Oh, it's brutal.
So again, when we talk about the balance and how you figure out your day, and also, these you're writing manuals. This is not like, the dust particles flew off the side of the fader and whatever. Well, you're running technical shit, man. So,
yeah.
It's hard to slog through this stuff. It would be for me.
It's hard to slog
Maybe
through.
It's not for you.
Well, it's easier to write. It's harder to do just because it's boring, Yeah. Creative writing would be much harder to do, but it would be more fun to do, I guess.
Yeah.
Or at least I think. I've never written or at least anything big that way.
Yeah.
It came out of pragmatic situation. So my studio was at the house up the street, and I was slow. I didn't have much going on. And I sent out an email to do clinics where I'd say, I was in Pro Tools at that time, and I had known, I had assistants and people who were always asking me questions about how'd you do that? How'd you do this? And I'm like, I put the cattle call out, like, anybody want to do clinics? I'll charge you X. You guys all come over. We'll do whatever you want. And I'll teach you whatever you need to know, whatever the group decides. At least that was the plan. Mm-hmm. That never really happened, but the email got forwarded to a book editor at a company called Muska and Lipman. And they did like Photoshop for Dummies back in the 80s. They did, or early 90s. They did really well. And they, by technical how-to books. And out of this conversation, he said, hey, have you ever thought about writing a book? And I was like, no. Like, would you? And I was like, well, got nothing else going on, And
like, how big is that book advance?
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? I needed the money. Yeah. And so I came up with the idea for Pro Tools for film, video, and multimedia because everybody was using Pro Tools in post. Yep. Not one book had been written on it.
Wow.
And I was like, it's perfect, right? And I went to lunch with him and his boss, and I left lunch with a book deal, assuming I could write a sample chapter that was up to snuff, which was okay. And I worked with him as an editor and a copy editor and all this sort of stuff, and they taught me a lot. It was a very hard job. Mm-hmm. It took me about 6 months, and the book did really well. And, there was a lot of history in it about time code, all of these things that we were transitioning to, moving into digital from analog. You had to deal with all these problems, and you needed to know the history of film, film speeds, black and white television, all this stuff. And I covered all of this ground early on. I think that's why people like the book. Skywalker Sound, they use the book as their training material for their assistants. I want to call them up and be like, yo, bro, I wrote the book. Why don't you give me a job? I don't need the book.
Can I get a fucking lightsaber over here?
Yeah, exactly. I use the Force.
Just one, George. Come on.
So happily that went well. And Lars Baumann, who was the product manager at Steinberg for Nuendo, read the book, or at least saw the book and liked it, and emailed me, say, hey, would you like to write for Nuendo or for the manuals, to add manual stuff? That was back when they were doing Control Room and all the surround mix conversion and stuff like that. And I had already switched to Nuendo. I literally had my Pro Tools rig. I kept it long enough to edit that first book. And then as soon as the book was done, sold, and I had already had a Nuendo rig. That was right when Pro Tools HD came out, and I jumped ship because they wanted all my money and all my gear just to give me back the same thing again. I just wasn't buying it. And they didn't even have plug-in delay compensation back then. And Nuendo 2 did. And that's where I jumped ship and ended up going down the Steinberg route, and I've been there ever since. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Do you enjoy the writing process now that you've done it a few times?
I enjoy the very last period that I get to put on it. That's what I enjoy. it's painful to write that stuff, but
Yeah.
I must be reasonable at explaining things. So, because they keep on asking me to do it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Manuals like I'm writing for Dyne Audio now, the speaker manuals for the LYD series and the Core series, which is the new bigger speaker. And man, those are easy because they're short. So it's really not very painful at all. The long 400-page book, that's a slog because there's just so much. You got to stay organized. That's a very hard thing to do. But I haven't done that in a while.
Do you have any sort of, I don't want to say personal, but do you have any other ideas for books things that have come up along the way that you would like to do? Maybe that's not so super technical. Has that come up?
Maybe, but there's no time. I don't.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't come up against. We're like, what do we want to do today? No, that has not happened.
Yeah.
There's plenty of things going on, but yeah, who knows? Talking about building home studios, that sort of stuff. I mean, I've done a lot of studio design and construction now. Or practical stuff. But you know what? Honestly, any of that stuff I will do as a video. Video is where it's at. I mean, that's what we all do. We go to YouTube.
Yep.
Unless you want to fully nerd out and get every bit of the details, then you go to the print stuff. But otherwise, we all go to YouTube and we watch something and we check it out. So that's something I'd like to do more of. Explainer videos, that sort of stuff, whatever, tutorials, that sort of thing, or how I did it. And see if that applies to you. Room tuning, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's I'm fascinated by all that. Now working with Dyne Audio for a while. Speaker design, room acoustics. I just had the guy from Trinoff. That's the French company. They make a room tuning box, which is sitting right over there on top of the Neves right now.
Nice.
The Trinoff Demon box. I have to say this thing's awesome. You take a microphone and a very special microphone that's a 3D, has multiple capsules, and you measure your room, and it does the EQ and phase correction. And there's lots of software that does it, but this one does it. I've never heard anything like it. It's amazing.
Wow.
Learned a lot during the process of getting educated on this box and stuff like that. So yeah, that subject I think would be interesting to cover, but as a video.
Right, but as a video. Nice. What's the one piece of gear? What's your favorite piece of gear in that studio?
My favorite piece of gear or the most important piece of gear?
Let's do both.
The most important piece of gear is the speakers, because that informs everything else. I can make a record with a 57 and a Mackie as long as I have good speakers. And right now they're the Dyne Audio Core 59s. I have one of the first pairs in the country, I guess. Oh, they're shipped. I guess they're coming now, but I wrote the manual on them and worked with the speaker designer. So they're very close to my heart, I should say. And they're freaking awesome. 1,100 watts a piece. They kick ass.
Oh my God.
And it's a 3-way. So the mid-range detail is there. And it's making my mixing go faster. You know? When you get a real set of speakers, all of a sudden, all these problems that you're battling against, they just go away. You're like, oh, I have to turn that down. And then you go to the car or whatever, which was your backup plan. Right. And go, oh, yeah, it sounds good. You know, whereas before you go to the car and be like, shit, the bass is, when he hits that C, it's just like, you know, and you got to go back and fix it. That's wrong. We should have great monitoring. I think that's the key to getting your job done better, quicker. So yes, that is the most important piece of gear. My favorite piece of gear, I think, is the Schmidlin Fed Plus limiter. It's a tube limiter that my dearly departed friend, Tom Schmidlin, TJ, he's passed away, but he built this remake of the federal broadcast limiter that the military used, the Fed. And a lot of people use this. Michael Brower is a big user of the Fed. He has a couple of them. He made a rebuild of the circuit with some added controls, attack and release, and I got to work with him, you know, evaluating it and making suggestions. And I have one here, and it's just baller, man. That thing sounds great on everything. Wow. So, and I think it's my favorite because I have a personal connection to it, and it's great. So I don't know. There you go.
Favorite mic?
This is tough too. Okay, the most important mic or my favorite mic?
Both.
Okay, the most used microphone in the studio is the SM7. I think anybody out there,
SM7.
everybody who's been working on it on the studio for a long time knows the SM7 is the hardest working mic in show business. Vocals, bass amp, snare drum, guitar, bass amp, whatever. It's great. Hi-hat. It's awesome for hi-hat.
It's really also taken the podcasting world by storm. I don't know if you've
There's
seen that.
two words, Joe Rogan,
Yeah.
because he's SM7s in his studio, which
Yep.
I look at him, I'm like, cool, Joe.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But even folks on YouTube that I watch, like way under that, they're all using SM7s. I've wanted to try one, and I haven't pulled the trigger yet. But
They're great.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're great.
$350, I think, is sort of going rate for them, and it's totally worth it.
Yep.
They're like a 57 that you want to have.
Do you
has a
need the
better
cloud
transfer.
lift? Do you need to use the cloud lift on it?
They can be a little dark, but I don't think so. I mean, if you're just dealing with dialogue, I mean, they have a little EQ boost on the mic that you can use.
Okay.
I don't have any cloud lifters here. A guy from Telarc Records was here a few weeks ago. He had cloud lifters for the AAA ribbons we were using, but that's my first experience with them, so can't say beyond that. So SM7, the most important mic. My favorite mic currently right now is the DPA 4011, which has always been a favorite mic of mine. Because, so working with the Dynaudio Unheard, the container recording studio, Dynaudio Unheard.
Yeah.
It's all DPA mics, and I got to meet Bo Brink from DPA and work with those guys and the other guys in the Masters Club, and he sort of wants to get me in the Masters Club. So he said, why don't you take all these mics home with you? And I was like, by all means, Bo, I shall. Which one of them I'm using right now? This is the DPA dot lab mic, which I think sounds freaking awesome. I would use this on kick drum.
Wow.
I shit you not. I have others that I would maybe have a first choice, but this one, you can stick it anywhere, and it's just this teeny little lap. So the 4011 sound great on the drum overheads. They sound great on everything. Their 4099, which is that little clip mic, we use that on kick drum. Sounded awesome. I use it on the tom-toms, and it looks like I'm cheating because I hate clipping mics onto drums because of the vibrations,
Yeah.
They have their own little shock mount on them. They're, I don't know. The other day I had Wally Reyes Jr., who's the touring drummer with Chicago, in here cutting some tracks for a friend of his, and of course, put the DPAs on the toms because they're here, and there's nothing, no EQ, Shadow Hills Gamma, mic preamp, done. They just sound right. They sound correct.
Wow.
So, I guess the DPAs are my favorite mics. I made it plural. I'm sorry, but they're all really great.
Tell me about
shout out for hooking me up.
Yeah. Tell me about the container, shipping container experience.
This is the craziest thing I've ever done. And so Christian, who's the marketing director at Dynaudio, called me up and he said, hey, would you like to help us build and design a recording studio in shipping containers that we can, or initially it was just one shipping container. It ended up being two, that we can take to music festivals. We can take it on location. And the cool thing about it is the whole one side of the studio, both containers, is glass. Wow. So you can see in. And we took it to Smukfest in Denmark, which is the big music festival there, right where Dynaudio headquarters are. And we set up in this campground, and we brought all these unsigned artists in, and the audience would come. We'd had a PA system outside, and yet I'm recording them on the inside, and we had video guys there, so we're doing a live video feed. So these unsigned artists come in. That's why it's called Unheard. And we give them this Class A recording, world-class recording. They get a video, and the audience gets to see the process of what goes on inside the recording studio. They can see me in the control room, fiddling with knobs.
Yeah.
They see the band. They hear my talkback mic, like, okay, let's try that again once more with feeling, and they get a vibe for it, and they participate. They're, like, should we do another take? And we look out at the audience. You're like, what do you guys think? And they're like, yeah, do another take.
That's so awesome.
It's really cool.
Are these things, are they side to side or end to end?
They're end to end. At least that's the way I designed it. So the control room is a 20-foot container, and the recording room is a 40-foot container, and we put their ends together, and there's a small window in each, so I can see through, and I can see everybody, and then the audience gets to see the one side because it's all plate glass on the one side.
Right.
And then we call them the transfer boxes, where we interconnect the two containers for network and some audio lines and AES lines and video as well. And that's how it works. Like, right, I just got off the phone with him this morning. I'm flying out to Joshua Tree where the American containers are. We designed a second set, built another set for the West Market. And they were at the NAMM show. If anybody was there and saw the Dyno Audio containers out where the food trucks were, that was me. And now they're sitting on this guy's ranch in Joshua Tree. And I need to fly out to position them. We're going to forklift them and get them centered and leveled so he can do some recording out there. I mean, how cool is this, right? Joshua Tree, you're going to be in your recording studio, but the whole wall is glass, and all you're seeing is the sunset over the cacti, and you're like,
oh my God.
I don't know, man. It's pretty cool. So I literally just got the call this morning. I fly out on Monday, evidently. So
wow.
Just to get them set up. Then we're going to go back in April and do some more recording with bands. CNN was kind of on this. I think hopefully they'll come out and film it because it's sort of a, special interest kind of story.
How long will it be out there?
I don't know. The plan was to take it to Coachella, perhaps. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but we'd set up a Coachella, as people are coming in and out, they'd see us doing our thing and get to hear unsigned artists. I mean, and we give all the material to the artists. If anybody, they can, I'm trying to think if I have an email address where you could email if artists are interested in getting involved with this, wherever it is, that they should look up Dyno Audio Unheard and see if, message people on YouTube or on Facebook it's all over, social media, and get in touch with us because we're always looking for unsigned artists that are talented and need a break because we give them all of the recordings. They get the videos. It's all free. Nobody's being charged for any of this.
Wow.
It's a cool give back. It's fun for me to be a part of it because I get to hear all this interesting music. What the girl in L.A. I got her CD over here. She was my favorite artist from the NAMM show, so I want to give her a shout out. Eva and the Vagabond Tales. I just thought she was cute as can be, and her songs were just evocative. I mean, I don't know. Check them out, Eva and the Vagabond Tales. That was my favorite artist from NAMM. I really enjoyed her.
Do you go to every NAMM? Do you go to summer NAMM too?
I've been going a lot recently for Dyno Audio mostly. Yep. I'll go to the show. I like this time I was outside. I never even set foot in the show. I was, recording bands out in my air conditioned box. I had the luckiest spot in the place. But
man, if you bring that thing to the East Coast, you got to let me know.
Well, AES perhaps down at the Javits Center or. That would be the only one I can think of offhand that.
Yeah. Do you come? Are you at AES every year?
Usually, yeah. With usually the last few.
Yeah, I was there.
That's where I see Jason. I always hang out with Jason. I'm like, Jason, what are we eating tonight?
Right.
Because he knows all the ramen noodle places.
Yeah.
Well, this and that.
All right. Well, this October, if you and I don't catch up at Summer NAMM, which I'm going to try to get to,
I'll try to be there as well.
Then I'll see you in October, whenever it is for AES.
What about Gear Fest? Do you go to Sweetwater?
When's that? Where's that thing?
That's in July, I think. Sweetwater is in Fort Wayne, which is only 3 hours from Cincinnati. So I just drive up there. I've never been. I've gone to Sweetwater to do clinics or, where you talk to the sales staff about I've done it for the speakers where I've set up the speakers and say, hey, this is how they work. This is what they sound like. Yeah. But Gear Fest, I think the containers are going to be there. And if so, I'll definitely be there, of course.
Gear Fest. And that's just like a big thing sponsored by Sweetwater. It's huge, just like all musical gear.
It's huge. And it's kind of bigger than Summer NAMM now. It's kind of taken the place of it, or at least that's my impression. It's massive. The guy's got it's like Google of the East. He's got the biggest setup out there. It's unbelievable. They're the biggest music retailer in the world.
Oh man, you're killing me.
Well, you come to Cincinnati, we go to the Bourbon Bar, then we take the drive up to Fort Wayne, and
Right, we do the Bourbon Bar before the drive. We get a little, get a little
Maybe
loose.
We got to turn that around. You need to turn that around. Come back the other way.
Oh man, Ashley, this has been awesome, dude. We could keep going, but I want to be mindful of your time. You probably have a book to write, and you got a band coming in, and you got a movie deadline.
Just an animated 5-minute today. We're gonna put the current mix on this animation thing for Prudential. And
Cool, man.
And then that's my Friday, and I'm gonna have to go eat dinner with a film composing friend of mine, which is always fun.
Yeah. I appreciate you giving me the time. AudioGrotto.com is the place to find you, right?
AudioGrotto.com is the studio.
Yep.
And Picturemusic.com is like our production company where we're doing the commercial work and original music and that sort of stuff. So those are the two A1A places to find me.
Awesome.
There's social media on ish. Picture Music has Instagram. I have my YouTube channel on audio. It's Audio Grotto on YouTube. Has a lot of these tutorial videos for nuage and various things, and videos of artists here at the church playing upstairs, like Ingrid Michaelson's a real popular one. Stuff like that. I'm easy to find.
Well, Ashley, man, I really appreciate you doing this, and hopefully we'll catch up with each other at one of these events we just teased.
We'd better.
All right, brother. I'll see you out there.
All right. Cheers. Thank you.
Ashley, sir, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. Guys, stay tuned next week, episode 129. My guest is Laura Davis Chanin, drummer for the Student Teachers back in the 70s. You can follow us during the week at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. All is Roadie Free Radio. Check out the website, roadiefreeradio.com. Send me a note because you know I want to hear from you. That's info@roadiefreeradio.com. And my friends, in the meantime, you all be safe out there. No roadies, no rock and roll.